All right, welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive.
Yeah.
Today, we're going to be looking at something that's been making headlines,
Okay.
and that's the end of Seth Rogen and James Franco's friendship.
Interesting.
You know, these guys, they were like the ultimate bromance. I
Right.
mean, we're talking Pineapple Express, this is the end.
Yeah. Total comedy duo.
And now, well, Franco's saying it's over.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what happened? Like, what led to this?
Yeah, that's the big question, right? So, to kind of give everyone the backstory,
Okay.
we need to go back to 2018 when those sexual misconduct allegations against Franco first came out.
Right. I remember that.
And initially, Rogen actually defended him.
Oh, so he did?
He did. But then things started to change. He started distancing himself publicly.
Okay.
And now we're here years later, and Franco is saying in interviews the friendship is over.
Oh.
He even said he felt really hurt by Rogen's actions.
He did. Where did he say that?
In a Variety interview.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it was pretty powerful. Like, he talked about how much their 20-year friendship meant to him.
So he's still trying to kind of like salvage things, even after all this.
Yeah, it seems like it. He even said, I love Seth. We had 20 great years together, but I guess it's over. And not for lack of trying. I've told him how much he's meant to me.
Wow. That's heavy.
It is.
But what about Rogen's side of things?
Yeah, so Rogen actually did an interview with Esquire.
Okay.
And get this, he claimed he didn't even know about Franco's comments in Variety.
Seriously?
Yeah, he said he doesn't really keep up with the media, which
I mean, come on.
I know, right?
He's got to be aware of this stuff.
It's hard to believe. But anyway, more importantly, he really emphasized his stance against any kind of abuse or harassment.
Oh, yeah. He made a big statement about that back in 2021, didn't he?
Exactly. And he basically doubled down on that in this Esquire interview, saying he despises that kind of behavior and would never cover for anyone who does that.
That's interesting because I remember in that 2021 statement, he specifically said, I have not and I do not plan to work with Franco right now. And to me, that always felt like it went beyond just a professional decision, you know?
Oh, for sure. Like, he's drawing a line in the sand. It's like those personal values trump everything else, even this long history they have.
It really makes you think, like, are some things just unforgivable?
Definitely raises that question.
But before we get too deep into that, I think we need to take a closer look at the actual allegations against Franco.
Yeah, that's important. So back in 2018, 5 women came forward.
Okay.
4 of them were former students of Franco's, and they accused him of inappropriate and sexually exploitative behavior.
And this led to that lawsuit, right?
Exactly. 2 of those women, Sarah Tither Kaplan and Tony Gall, they filed a lawsuit in 2019.
Right.
And this lawsuit, it really focused on Playhouse West Studio 4, which was a school Franco co-founded back in 2014.
Okay.
And the lawsuit claimed that Franco and his partners were engaging in widespread inappropriate and sexually charged behavior towards female students by sexualizing their power as a teacher and an employer by dangling the opportunity for roles in their projects.
Wow. That's a mouthful.
It is. But that phrase, sexualizing their power, it really stands out.
That's serious.
The lawsuit essentially claimed that Franco and his partners used their positions of authority to pressure these students into uncomfortable situations, often promising them career advancement.
That's awful.
It is, and one of the most disturbing examples was this sex scenes masterclass that Franco taught.
Oh, right. I remember hearing about that.
Yeah, the lawsuit accused him of pushing students to perform really explicit scenes that went way beyond what's normal for an acting class.
Can you imagine being a young actor wanting to learn from a Hollywood star
I know.
and then being put in that kind of position?
A huge abuse of power.
It really highlights how easily those power dynamics can be exploited in Hollywood.
Absolutely.
So what happened with the lawsuit?
Well, it ended up being settled in 2021 for $2.23 million.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, and you can't really ignore the weight of that outcome.
No, you can't.
So now we have Franco talking about life after the lawsuit, the pandemic, in that Variety interview. He seems grateful to be working again, but he also acknowledges that he needed to change.
Good.
He even said that all the criticism and rejection forced him to confront his own behavior and really try to grow.
So you have him on this path of self-reflection and change while dealing with the consequences.
Yeah, and then you have Rogen on the other side, firmly planted on the side of accountability.
Right.
Refusing to work with Franco and taking this strong moral stance against abuse.
It really is fascinating how these two friends who were once so close are now on such different paths.
It is, isn't it?
Franco seeking reconciliation, acknowledging he needs to grow.
And Rogen keeping his distance, prioritizing his stance against misconduct.
Makes you think about how complicated these situations are, both personally and publicly.
It's like, how do you balance loyalty to a friend with holding someone accountable for potentially harmful actions?
Exactly, and it's a question that goes way beyond just Rogen and Franco. It's a bigger societal conversation we're all having right now.
It really is.
And that's actually what we'll be diving into next time.
Oh yeah, we're just getting started.
We're going to explore the bigger implications of all this, looking at those power dynamics in Hollywood and how things are changing in terms of accountability.
So stay tuned.
It's going to be good.
Okay, so we've laid out this whole Rogen-Franco situation, but like this isn't just about two guys in Hollywood, right?
No, not at all. It really highlights these bigger issues of power and accountability, especially in industries like entertainment, where those lines can get blurry.
Yeah, for sure. It's like their story is a magnifying glass on those larger issues.
Exactly. And it makes us ask those tough questions like, what happens when your loyalty to a friend clashes with the need to hold them accountable?
Right. And how do we navigate this world where public opinion and individual choices are constantly colliding?
It feels like everyone's trying to figure out where those boundaries are.
Especially with social media amplifying everything.
Yeah, you're right.
And that's what makes the Rogen-Franco case so interesting, because we're seeing two totally different approaches playing out in real time.
Right, you have Franco, who seems determined to repair that friendship, even with all the weight of those allegations and the damage to his reputation.
He's almost putting the relationship above everything else, even while acknowledging that he needs to grow personally.
Exactly. And then you have Rogen, who's chosen to distance himself publicly and take this really firm stance against any form of abuse.
Which a lot of people can relate to, especially in a post-#MeToo world where there's this huge emphasis on holding abusers accountable.
You've hit a nerve there.
Yeah.
It's not just about individual choices anymore. It's a cultural shift.
Right. Like we're moving away from protecting powerful people and really starting to prioritize the safety and well-being of those who are vulnerable.
Absolutely. And that leads to a big question. Does Rogen's stance mean that some things are simply unforgivable? Like no matter how long you've been friends or how sincere the apologies are?
It's hard to say because he hasn't explicitly said that, but his actions definitely speak volumes.
Oh, yeah, for sure. His refusal to work with Franco and that unwavering condemnation of any abuse sends a pretty clear message.
It really makes you think, where do you draw the line in your own life?
Right, like can you separate the art from the artist? Can you stay friends with someone who's been accused of causing harm, even if they say they're sorry and want to change?
Man, those are some seriously tough questions to think about, but they're questions that we all have to grapple with.
I think this situation really forces us to confront the fact that anyone can be both a victim and a perpetrator, you know?
Yeah, it doesn't matter how famous or successful you are.
And that's where those power dynamics in Hollywood really come into play.
It's scary how easily those imbalances can be exploited.
And that's why it's so important to have safeguards in place and promote a culture of respect, especially in those environments.
You're talking about creating spaces where people, especially those who are new to the industry or in less powerful positions, feel safe speaking up if something isn't right.
Exactly. It's about transparency and making sure that allegations are taken seriously, investigated properly, and addressed appropriately.
So it's not about rushing to judgment or cancel culture, but about having a system where due process is respected while also protecting potential victims.
Absolutely. And I think the role of bystanders is crucial here.
It is. You can't just ignore things or sweep them under the rug.
We all have a responsibility to speak up, to challenge inappropriate behavior and support those who've been harmed.
Because silence just allows these cycles of abuse to continue.
And it takes a lot of courage to speak out, especially when you're dealing with powerful people or institutions.
But that courage is what ultimately leads to change.
It creates a culture where people feel empowered to come forward, knowing they'll be believed and supported.
So going back to Rogen and Franco, their different responses show us the whole spectrum of reactions you can have to allegations of misconduct.
Yeah, you have Rogen taking this very public stance against the abuse, basically saying, I won't tolerate this, and I won't be associated with anyone who does.
And that's a message that really resonates with people who believe in zero tolerance, you know.
Yeah. For sure, they believe actions have consequences no matter what the personal relationships are.
And then you have Franco, who's focusing on introspection and reconciliation and saying he needs to grow and change.
And that can resonate with people who believe in second chances.
Right. They believe that people can actually change and learn from their mistakes.
The thing is, neither response is necessarily right or wrong.
Yeah. It's not black and white at all.
Both Rogen and Franco are going through this incredibly difficult situation, and they're responding based on their own values and experiences.
And it reflects a struggle that we're all having as a society.
How do we hold people accountable for the harm they've caused while also recognizing that they can grow and change?
It's about balancing justice with the possibility of forgiveness and reconciliation.
And those are questions that go way beyond Hollywood.
They really do.
They're questions we'll keep wrestling with as a society.
So as we move into the last part of this deep dive, let's shift our focus to those larger implications. What can we learn from this whole Rogen-Franco situation about power accountability and the need for systemic change, not just in Hollywood, but everywhere? All right, so we've really been digging into this whole Rogen-Franco thing, and what gets me is how much bigger it is than just Hollywood.
It really is like a crash course in navigating those tricky waters of power and accountability and those gray areas where right and wrong aren't so clear.
Exactly. It's easy to get wrapped up in the drama, but what can we actually take away from this? How can we apply these lessons in our own lives?
Well, I think a good starting point is just self-reflection.
Okay.
We all exist within systems of power, whether it's at work or with family or even just in our friend groups.
Right.
And taking a moment to examine those dynamics can be really eye-opening.
So you're saying we should all be asking ourselves, are there power imbalances in my own life? And am I creating an environment where people feel safe to speak up if something's wrong? Exactly.
It's about being aware of those dynamics and actively working to create spaces where people feel heard and respected and like they can share their experiences without being judged or punished.
This makes me think about allyship. It's not enough to just not be the problem we have, to be actively advocating for change.
I totally agree. True allyship means standing up for those who might be marginalized or silenced, even when it's hard or inconvenient,
Right.
It's about using your own voice and platform to amplify the voices of others.
And it's about educating yourself, right? Like really understanding the nuances of power and consent and accountability so you can be a better advocate.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power, right? The more we understand these issues, the better we can identify and challenge those harmful behaviors and systems.
And that also means being careful about the information we consume, especially on social media, where things can get blown out of proportion so quickly.
Oh, for sure. We need to be really critical of what we're reading and seeing online. Check those sources, consider different perspectives, and don't just jump to conclusions or pile onto a public shaming campaign.
We have to remember that real accountability is a process. It's not just a one-time thing.
Right. It's about creating space for growth and learning and making amends.
And that often happens behind closed doors, away from the public eye.
It might involve therapy or restorative justice programs or a genuine commitment to changing those harmful behaviors.
So if we zoom out and look at the bigger picture with this Rogen-Franco thing, I think it shows us the need for systemic change.
Yeah.
It's not just about holding individuals accountable. It's about creating structures that prevent abuse from even happening.
I couldn't agree more. We need to be looking at policies and procedures and cultural norms that might be enabling or excusing this harmful behavior without even realizing it.
Like having clear codes of conduct, establishing safe and accessible ways for people to report misconduct, and providing training on power dynamics and consent.
Right. And bystander intervention.
Exactly. It's about shifting the focus from protecting those in power to protecting the most vulnerable.
This deep dive into the Rogen-Franco situation has been quite a journey.
It really has. We've covered so much.
We've explored the complexities of friendship, the nuances of accountability, and the power of both individual and collective action.
It's a reminder that these issues are really complicated and there are no easy answers.
But by having these conversations, by challenging ourselves and each other, and by working towards positive change, we can all make a difference.
So as we wrap up, I want to leave you with this one last thought.
Okay.
In a world where power dynamics are constantly at play, what does real accountability look like to you?
It's a question worth thinking about and a conversation worth having.
For sure.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Until next time, keep learning, keep asking questions, and keep striving for a better world.